Good evening, and once again, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host. Yep, it's me, James Donnelly, your host of the Shadow Gallery. And it is time for the pick of the week of last week, the continuation of New Comics, bitches! So, for those of you who probably can't tell by the outfit that I'm wearing, this wasn't just for my Halloween day at work today, which we did have, which I dressed like this. I couldn't bring my great big shield, but I was dressed, yes, indeed, as Captain America, and it's part of the reason that we're going to be talking about tonight, is that ultimately we're going to be talking about the finale, Captain America 19, the end of Ed Brubaker's, well, let's just call it seminal run on Captain America, the character. The arc has definitely had its ups and downs. It was at its worst over the last arc. It was really when it was at its worst. But for quite a few years, it was at its best. Basically, pretty much everything prior to the film, ironically enough, when the title broke off into two separate titles, when we had just Captain America and then Captain America and Bucky, which then of course, co-writers were brought in, and then, just other writers just completely took it over. And it became, Captain America and Hawkeye, Captain America and Iron Man, now we're on to Captain America and Black Widow, none of these having to do anything with Ed Brubaker. But at least Ed Brubaker has continued to work on the main Captain America story. Now, in this finale, well, let's talk a little bit about, because that's one of the things I want to talk about here tonight, which is why I wanted to make a separate video, because I knew I was going to talk for a long time about this, is that if we look over the run that he had, what was the first thing that Ed Brubaker did when he came to Marvel and started writing Captain America? He did, basically, there were kind of like three deaths in the entirety of Marveldom that were considered inviolate. The one is Ben Parker. You can't bring back Ben Parker. There's no way you can bring back Ben Parker. That will never happen. You will see him from time to time, of course. It will either be flashbacks, or it'll be travel to the past, or parallel universes, what have you. But no, Uncle Ben Parker will never exist again. He will never come back to life. The other, again, with Spider-Man, the other is Gwen Stacy. Now, Gwen Stacy, of course, sort of came back, cloned, but then that clone, and then, of course, we had the infamous, horrible Sins Past Amazing Spider-Man storyline, which we found out that, Gwen Stacy had secretly had love children with Norman Osborn. Oh my god, I so hate J. Michael Straczynski's run on Amazing Spider-Man. But if we didn't have that run, we wouldn't have had the pseudo retcon, which eventually would lead the way for Dan Slott to come back. The third was James Buchanan Barnes. You could not bring back Bucky because that would, in effect, to many people, erase, uh, almost 40 years, pretty much, of the characters of Captain America's history and kind of his reason for being brought back. I mean, something that was such a huge factor for him in the decades since, he was revived in Avengers #4. The first words out of his mouth are Bucky, because we flash back, of course, to, I mean, not where the original Joe Simon, Jack Kirby comic was coming from, but to a plot that, of course, Stan Lee had helped to create, along, I'm assuming, with Jack Kirby, that Bucky had indeed died in this explosion of this buzz bomb created by Baron Zemo. So I mean, part of part of Captain America's whole Man out of Time arc was that he had this great he was suffering this great tragedy of not being able to save Bucky. That he failed him somehow, which is why he would kind of get a partner for a little while. Rick Jones put on the Bucky costume for a little while, and Cap said no, that's not going to fly. And then of course he would have a partner in the Falcon, and then eventually he would then he would kind of toss that aside. He would become he became Nomad. This was paralleling the whole Nixon Watergate scandal and a corrupt U.S. president, which is why he could no longer serve as the symbol of the country, and so on and so forth. So the first thing that Ed Brubaker did, the first arc that he did, was the reworking, the bringing forth of James Barnes into the modern comics era, but not, of course, as Bucky. He was now a Cold War assassin, master assassin called the Winter Soldier. Of course, we all know this. This is all, this is all very deeply discussed canon, as far as that's concerned. But what was surprising about that arc to many people who thought, well, this is going to be the worst piece of shit ever if he's bringing back Bucky, is that he not only brought him back, but brought back kind of this this intense kind of almost renewing of the Cold War, but in a modern sensibility. It was very kind of espionage based. He was out there and he was doing the shield slinging and everything like that, but he was working very closely with shield. He was working with Sharon Carter, and so when we had all of these kind of supporting players kind of coming out of the woodwork once again. And it was amazing. I mean, to me, it was like, it was something that I visited, unfortunately, long after the book had already kind of taken off. I picked it up I started picking it up kind of midway through the Red Menace arc, which is basically, we have this, Alexander Lukin, who is, kind of controlling the Winter Soldier, and of course it's really the Red Skull, and I mean that's that's the other first thing that you see in the very first issue. You see the Red Skull being killed, and as we find out, of course, is by the Winter Soldier. But not before, of course, his you know his consciousness transfers to the cosmic cube, the great Deus ex machina of the Captain America universe, the cosmic cube. And of course, upon the shattering of that, we have his personage basically being transferred to Lucan, and we kind of slowly see his descent into insanity. And then we had this, and I'm not going to go through the whole history of the thing, but we had the death of Captain America. We had Civil War, and we had the death of Captain America. Huge news, and this was something that was like, okay, Brubaker's gone like to a level so far beyond what people have done before with Captain America. He's not only successfully brought back Bucky, but he's killed the main character. He's killed a character that's existed for 70 years, since 1940. And this was back in 2006 or 2007, whenever it was. And then all of a sudden it was about the supporting characters stepping up to the plate. And so we would have bits with the Falcon, we would have bits with Sharon Carter, we would have bits with Nick Fury, we would have bits then with Bucky. We kind of, and then we kind of had this bizarre, the Captain America Reborn saga, which was kind of meh. But it successfully brought back Captain America, the Steve Rogers Captain America. But this is one of kind of the complaints that I have about that book, is that it brought him back too soon, because I was really, really enjoying the fact that Bucky, kind of Captain America's kind of his last wish, if you will, his last will and testament, was to have Nick Fury make Bucky wield the shield. That this is the way to save him. And of course it was, for a while, until we thought that he died in Fear itself. But of course he's now come back. He's, kind of as playing dead, so that he can come back as the Winter Soldier once again, but as the good side of the Winter Soldier. And of course Brubaker's kicking ass on the Winter Soldier, because he has very kind of editorial control over that, and he kind of always meant it to be a limited, not a very long-lasting series, which is why he's leaving it, after issue either 14 or 16, I can't remember. But here we are. This is the second to last book that Ed Brubaker will have done, at least for the time being, for Marvel. And we have, and we've had over the years, we've had some amazing artists on Captain America. And the kind of preeminent one, the best one, that was on Captain America when Brubaker was writing it, was Steve Epting. And that's what we have here in this final issue, in issue 19. We have this farewell of this character that both Brubaker and Epting successfully brought back and really made vital again. Because Cap, he had always been one of my favorite Marvel characters, and kind of is my favorite Marvel character. But he's been, I hadn't collected his book in years. I have some trades. I have like the Operation Rebirth trade that Mark Waid and Ron Garney did, which the art is terrible, but the story is very interesting. Um, and you know, I would kind of pick it up here and there for a little while, but always would kind of lose interest because nothing really kind of my held nothing about it really held a grip on me other than, well, it's just exciting to see Cap in action for a little while, but nothing took my breath away as much as Brubaker's run. I'd like to go back and see some of the stuff that was from like the late 70s and the early 80s with you know, John Byrne and Roger Stern and stuff like that. But you know, just the way that he actually gave his supporting characters so much life and so much vitality in these issues, so that when he was gone, when Steve Rogers was gone, he could continue with this cast of supporting characters and still make it a really, really riveting read. But what we have here is very much a throwback to the very first issue that they did, is that Captain America is confronting these bad guys on top of the subway train, and but it's not Steve Rogers, as we find out. It is the Captain America of the 50s, because you know, we've had over the years, you know, someone must always wear the stars and stripes. Someone always needs to be Captain America. And it's interesting because it gets because what we have here is Steve Rogers is visiting, because you know, all the other Captain Americas that they've tried out have either died in action, or they've been, you know, they've gone insane because of the super soldier serum that was used on them didn't work as well as was on, you know, as it did on him. You know, even, and this is something that wasn't touched upon, and probably for good reason, because it's not really a Cap villain per se, but the character of Nuke, of Frank Simpson from the Born Again storyline, he is another experiment of the super soldier program. That, of course, you know, went, again, hopelessly insane. But, you know, what we have here is, you know, this other Captain America, after kind of this epic bout with Steve, kind of threw himself in front of an oncoming truck. And he's in the hospital. And basically, he's there to talk to him, to tell him about what his life has been. And we go through a lot of Cap's history. We go through, you know, to when he was just a frail kid being picked on in Brooklyn, you know, his father dying, then, you know, living through the Great Depression, and his mother, you know, who loved him and doted on him, you know, even while, you know, incredibly frail and sickly, and she died. And, you know, he would see things about the war, and he just knew that he wanted to be a part of it. And we go through the years. Now, this is something, I'm going to throw something here at you. There's a line in The Avengers, which I think is, it's one of my favorite lines, because it's one of my least favorite lines as far as anything that's someone would say to Captain America, and that's in the whole kind of argument scene where everybody's being combative with everybody else, and Tony Stark throws, you know, in his face, you know, everything that's special about you came out of a bottle, and of course nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, Steve Rogers was a very special person before he became Captain America. You know, the tragedy of Steve Rogers' life, not only being kind of the man out of time and, you know, for so many years thinking that he had lost Bucky, was that he was the only one. You know, if the super soldier serum had indeed gone, you know, as well as it did with him, would there have been other super soldiers? Would the the mantle of Captain America solely fall on him to uphold. And of course, we know that's not the case. But that is, again, because everything kind of, so many things rested on his shoulders. And of course, we have Bucky coming in. We have this really interesting little meta moment in which he's talking about the original Captain America comics from 1940. And he's talking about Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. When they created him, they actually, literally got death threats from the American Nazi Party, the Bund. And that's something that really happened. So, what we have here is a lot of fan service to people who have been fans of Cap throughout the years. We get these moments of his life. We get, him, of course, getting the super soldier serum, getting the Vita rays, coming out, being all powerful and strong. We have him, kind of throwing away not throwing away, but saying, okay, I'm not going to be Captain America anymore because we had this disgraceful president. And now, of course, this does make you kind of question the timeline here. Is like, well, which, because I know obviously there are a lot of fictional presidents in the White House, but there have been a lot of real ones in the White House as well. So it's like, well, when did this happen? Was this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago? When did this happen that he became Nomad? But then, of course, he returned to it eventually, and then, of course, you had John Walker, who eventually became U.S. agent, take up the Shield for a while, and he was kind of a nut, but not like insane crazy, because his parents were killed, I think, by Flag Smasher, Ultimatum. I can't remember exactly who did it. Hate Monger. I don't remember exactly who did it, but again, this whole kind of and also then goes through the beats of what he's done with Cap since he's been on the title. And there's a lot of moments of it's basically, there's a lot of reflection here. He didn't want to make this last issue like a big grand fight issue. It was basically just paying respect to the stories that have come before, the events in Steve's life that created and molded this ideal of the American dream. And again, one of my favorite lines of Captain America ever is actually from Born Again, which is when there's this moment where Cap, of course, is kind of passively confronting a corrupt military general who's working with the Kingpin. And the Kingpin, or the general, says something about, we've always admired your loyalty, and he's standing right next to an American flag, Cap is, and he kind of holds the flag and says, I am loyal to nothing, General, except the dream. And that is like, it's kind of like the perfect encapsulation of everything Captain America is. Now, of course, Captain America will continue on. That's part of what this book is saying, is that it's not going to be, it's not going to be Ed Brubaker anymore. It will go on. Rick Remender and John Romita Jr. are going to be taking him to kind of these weird, they started talking about these kind of weird sci-fi places that they intend to take him to. They're also going to kind of take him back in time a little bit, maybe either exploring some of his past or literally take him back in time. I don't know. But what this is it's a moment that we can take to reflect on what Brubaker's done with this title. Brubaker and Epting have done with this, title that made it so great for so long. It was, I considered Ed Brubaker for long time to be the best writer in the business. And he certainly, I mean, who was working in the business on a regular basis. And, you know, the more stuff he did, the more I kind of kept falling in love with him. You know, the Marvels project, and you know, some of the work. You know, I didn't totally care for some of the work that he did on the X-Men. I thought Deadly Genesis was okay. The Fall of Shire Empire is great. I do love that work. But then the stuff, you know, and then he kind of rolled out of that, and that was fine. And of course, you know, him working with Matt Fraction on bringing the Immortal Iron Fist in, you know, some of the stuff that they worked in there was really awesome. And you know, he was just, you know, for a while he could just do no wrong. And then, like I said, the movie happened. He started, I think, focus a lot more on his creator-owned stuff. He obviously was focusing very, very much so on Criminal, because, you know, I think around that time was when we got the Criminal arc, The Last of the Innocent, which is by far the best arc of Criminal, in my opinion. And I think that's, you know, maybe not ever. You know, because there's more to come with Criminal, but that's certain. You know, of course, you know, his work on Incognito, and now his work on Fatale. You can definitely see this was a guy who was on his way out of Marvel. He didn't want to be there anymore for whatever reason. He just felt maybe that his time there was done, and he was going to more creator-owned stuff, and good for him. Because God knows I love Criminal, and I, for the most part, loved Incognito. I'm hoping that we get some more of that, and I loved, and I'm loving Fatale. So this issue, obviously, you know, I mean, just is beautifully written. It's, the art in it is fantastic. You know, I mean, having, you know, Epting back for this final issue, and just Brubaker doing it on his own, the two of them re-teaming once again to bring this character into, you know, kind of off into the sunset for now. At least this run, this creator's unique stamp that they put on it. So, but paying respect to Captain America over the decades. Something that this one issue very successfully did. And it's why Captain America 19 is an absolute 5 out of 5. It is absolutely my pick of the week. I couldn't have wanted a better kind of send-off for Captain America from Brubaker. So, you know, I'm gonna miss Ed at Marvel. Although, like I said, I think he himself kind of recognized that his time had kind of come, at least on the titles that he was working on. But, you know, Winter Soldier, like he said, he didn't think was even going to last this long. But, you know, it's doing it's doing not as well as, you know, a lot of the other Marvel titles, but it is doing very well for the type of book that it is. So, you know, the whole run as a whole, because you know, the first, like, 2/3 of the run, maybe 3/5, I don't know, maybe 3/4, no, I should say more, is pretty much perfect. You know, great writing, great art, really captivating storytelling, and then, of course, you know, the split happened. You know, Captain America and Bucky was still really good, but Captain America was not. It wavered. It was good. It was solid until kind of the last couple of arcs. So, thank you, Ed, and thank you, Steve, for bringing me back on board with, you know, like I said, probably probably my favorite Marvel character. And, best of luck in your future endeavors. And I hope to see you kicking ass on more titles. And Steve, whatever he's going to be doing in the near future, definitely looking forward to seeing more of his work. So anyway, that's it. So that was my pick of the week. And glad you watched. Glad you stuck around. Obviously, if this is your first time here, please feel free to subscribe. If this is your first time here, you'll probably notice that a lot of my other videos are really long, because I do like to talk with you, people of the online YouTube comic community, about comic books. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So, when I'm talking with, or to, or at other comic fans. So, thanks for watching. So this is me, James Donnelly, signing off for the night, saying again thank you for watching, and reminding you as always to stay in the shadows.